Peace, God bless. This King Rain coming with another video. In this particular video, we're going to be talking about the Breonna law. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that it has been passed in Louisville, Kentucky. Don't quote me on that. The panel is going to give their perspective on the entire situation involving Breonna Taylor in reference to the police officers not being charged. And they're going to somewhat cover the entire situation. I'm going to chime in on my perspective, but I'm also going to just speak on certain topics that they bring into the equation. And I'm going to expound on it more to better help individuals evaluate the information that they are receiving and give it from a different perspective.
At the time, we will welcome in Barbara Sexton Smith, Louisville councilwoman and one of the writers of Breonna's law. It bans no knock warrants. So in short, the law was passed because the community cried out for justice and change, of course. The grand jury, though.
Why should the community, have to cry out for justice? Do you know how weak that makes the so-called black community sound by saying that they cried out for justice? But as I stated in previous videos, I don't subscribe to the color race in reference to being black or white, because there is no such country as black. There's no culture that is called black. I don't give a damn about Jordan, smoking weed, weaves, jewelry, all the other shit. That does not define a culture. And as long as you subscribe to being a so-called black, you will forever be connected to the so-called white, because you can't have one without the other.
As we saw and talked about just a moment ago, Councilwoman announced their decision not to indict any of the officers directly involved in the killing of Breonna Taylor. So, for you, co-authoring this law, what do you say to your community now?
All right, well, first, I was completely devastated and incredibly disappointed as I listened to the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Kentucky stand before the world yesterday and make that report. I don't know how he can look in the mirror and face himself with that result. Those charges that were brought did not bring justice to Tamika Palmer, Breonna Taylor's mother. And I've spoken with Ms. Palmer a number of times. And when I asked her if we could name the law banning no-knock warrants and mandating the use of body cameras in all search warrants, I asked her one day if we could name that law Breonna's law, and she wept as we talked about it. So this is one small step in the right direction. I would like to add to the conversation.
In your opinion, this is a small step in the right direction. And I say, this is Barbara Sexton Smith's opinion, because she is not even a so-called black. And she's gonna expound on that more later on in the video. And I say that because we as a so-called black people, we want to include other races in our conversations and problems that we're having, when the other races don't include you in their conversations in reference to the problems they're having. So why are we so open to just letting people in? But we know part of the reason is because we are the first people here. We're the original people. We taught the other races how to survive and thrive. That is why we are also just so open and letting people come into our space in reference to the issues that we have. And just from my perspective, it needs to stop. Because as I stated earlier, not just too long ago, the other races don't include us in their conversations going on with their race. So we need to stop including other races. We can only fix things from within, because no one knows you better than you. No one knows the so-called black community better than the so-called black people. But we have to want to build and help ourselves, instead of always running to the so-called white and asking for equality and can you please stop shooting us and please stop killing us. That makes us look so weak. And that is a disgrace to God, our creator. We were created in the image of God and his angels. You know how much of a disgrace that is, that you're asking a so-called human to give you something that if you ask for from God through prayer and also you doing research and attaining more knowledge, God will provide you with the answer in order to help correct the issues of the, well, I'm going to specifically say for yourself. Because one solution doesn't work for the whole community. And the so-called community solution doesn't work for one individual or a group of individuals. And that leads me to this point, that there's no such thing as equality. If there's a such thing as equality, we would all need the same things to thrive and survive. We all look different, not only because of our DNA, so to speak, but because we're all different. The so-called black of the Americas is different from the so-called black of Africa. No two things are the same. And in America, they teach you that somewhat everything's the same. When you go anywhere, even with animals, the male lion is going to have a mane, and he's going to be somewhat bigger than the female. The female is not going to have a mane, and she's going to be somewhat smaller. And the Most High has done that so we could differentiate. And I also want to state that in reference to banning the use of the no-knock warrants, you need to blame Barack Obama for that, as that was something that he passed during his time in office. And the so-called Caucasian or whatever individual that's in the police force that uses that, you can't blame them, because that was something that was passed years ago. And I'm not expunging or protecting the officers in no way, shape, or form. I'm extremely sorry for Breonna Taylor's loss. I know her mother is extremely hurt, and I'm sorry to hear that. And I pray things get better for her. But we as a people, we have to work on this within each other. We can't ask the other races to help us. You're asking them to help us when, as soon as you finish talking to them about the discussion involving the so-called black community, they're laughing. And I know individuals not going to like me saying that, but I don't give a shit.
Conversation. It was earlier stated that this is not a black and white issue, but it is. It's very clear to me. What happened was white police officers arrived 3 in a row, shot and killed a young black woman in her home when she had committed no crime whatsoever, and she had no history of illegal drug activity. Those 3 bullets.
And that's understandable, Ms. Sexton Smith. And I'm not here to try to pull out imaginary shit out the air and just say, oh, well, it was this and it's that. I'm past that. I'm going to speak specifically about her saying that this is a black and white issue, when, as I stated in previous videos, there's no such country as black. There's no such culture as black. There's no such language as black. And we can expand this also to the so-called white, because a color cannot be a race. And as long as you subscribe to being a so-called black, you will forever be connected to the so-called white. And it's a damn shame that we've allowed America, us, the so-called black community, to denigrate us to the aspect of a color. And individuals just don't see that. They look at it like it's normal. When if you go to other countries, whether you go to Asia or If you go to Asia, they're not gonna tell you that, oh, my race is, oh, I'm a yellow man. As you know, in America, it goes by your so-called skin tone. When a color cannot be a race, it just can't.
List that you all mentioned, that they are charged 3 counts of wanton endangerment that went into the apartment next to Breonna Taylor's. Those were a white man, white woman, and a white child in that apartment. We have to recognize this reality and call this what it is. So we need massive reform all across our nation. And what I would love for the NBA to join me in the game of correcting and making equality what we say it is in our country. Do you think the NBA...
There is no such thing as equality. No two things look alike, and no two individual or no individuals are treated the same. There is no such thing as equality. And I know people are not going to like it. I don't give a shit. I really don't. But I speak on these things because I have a deeper insight. And I'm not saying that I'm better than anyone, but we have to really sit back and analyze ourselves as a so-called black community. We let other races dictate what our supposed race are, what our culture should be, and it should not be like that. It shouldn't.
NBA could work with us and help us pass Breonna's law.
Oh, and I'm sorry. I don't mean to keep stopping the video. I'm just expounding on more about what I'm saying, but this is something else that I wanted to ask. What can a so-called, I'm not going to say so-called, what can an NBA player really do for the so-called black community? Really? This person gets paid to play basketball. It's just like with LeBron James. He wants to speak on social not social topics, but social injustices that go on, and he doesn't really know shit. All LeBron really knows how to do is play basketball. Let's be honest. And that shows how disenfranchised we are as a so-called black community, that we look at so-called celebrities as individuals that can help us when they don't even live close to the same lives that we live. And I'm speaking to the so-called black community. But we will ask for these individuals to speak on certain topics, or they themselves are march and do all of these things when it's all for publicity. Because it looks good to seem like you're against the topic and you really want to fight for justice for it, if it's an injustice that has been done. But to ask for advice from these individuals is a moron's move.
In every city across America, in every 30 cities where we have an NBA team. That would be the next step, in my opinion.
Councilwoman, let me ask you this. We know that hours after the announcement was made, there were protests, and in the protests, 2 officers were shot. Can you talk to me about how they're doing?
And also, I may have stated previously in another video that whole idea of protesting, it doesn't do anything. I've stated in a previous video, if you were a king or queen, if you look at my videos and you're a woman, if you're a king or a queen and you had your own kingdom and country that you were ruling over, are the minority individuals that live in your kingdom, are you going to let them influence how you pass legislation and the politics of the country? Or are you going to be more so concerned with the majority of the country and the majority people that are in the country? Us as a so-called black community, we don't have king and queen mindsets. But when I make my videos, I speak to the so-called black man, because we are the most down and disrespected man on the planet. And that's why I expound and say the things I do, because I want to uplift the so-called black community. But it starts with the man, because the so-called black man, we are the leaders of our so-called community. And we shouldn't be having our women of our community, and also the other so-called black men of our community should not be going to Congress and these other places and begging for equality and better treatment. That is not, we're not supposed to be doing that. And we're damn sure not supposed to be protesting, because that doesn't lead to shit. And I know individuals are not going to like me saying that. I don't give a damn. This is a truth channel, and I plan on giving truth with my perspective. I'm not just giving my opinion.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up. Yesterday, around 8 or 8:30, 2 officers were shot, and they were shot very close to where I am now in District 4 that I represent. And I am under the impression that those officers were in stable condition last night and continue to be in stable condition. So thank you for asking about them. And a suspect was apprehended immediately.
This is Isaiah, and yes, we will join you in making this law uniformed across all states. The question I have is, and it's a simple one in terms of the Constitution, has it been resolved yet that we are part of, we the people, the classified Negro, colored, black, African Americans in this country?
And all of those connotations and terminology that Isaiah Thomas used have no bearing on the so-called black man of the Americas. We are not Negroes, African Americans, and as I stated earlier in the video, a color cannot be a race. And he said that when he started off his commentary that we're gonna help pass this law in all states or whatever the case may be. And best believe Isaiah Thomas is not gonna be going to Congress saying, yes, we want to pass the Breonna law. And he's from Chicago. He's not gonna be at the Chicago, Chicago Senate, and be begging and pleading that, please, can you pass this law so we can make things better? We want to pass the Breonna law. He's not going to be down there doing that. They say these things to get the common individual to go out there and beg and please give us equality, when no, we should not be doing that. And as I stated earlier in the video, it's a damn shame that we're so disenfranchised. We'll let celebrities supposedly represent us, and they'll say that they're speaking for the so-called black community. We have allowed ourselves to be connotated and downgraded to be represented and depicted as a so-called color. That's a damn shame. Even a dog has a specific pedigree that helps you identify what kind of dog it is. But us, we would rather be, well, not me, because I'm not going to be connotated to that. But we have become somewhat okay as the so-called black community of these things. In this video, it makes individuals think, and I'm going to continue to make more videos and uplift the so-called black community to get us back to the so-called king mentality that we had years ago. Because everything that we've been taught in reference to, just all blacks are slaves, is a narrative to make you feel less about yourself and to make the so-called white feel better about themselves. And this is not a race type thing. I'm just speaking in the aspect that we are in our captivity and the so-called white is in power at this moment.
Well, in my opinion, that has not been settled because I am a trustee of Simmons College of Kentucky, which is the only private historical black college and university in my state. And I've been a trustee for 16 years, so I am a champion for the ADOS movement. That
Ooh, oh, she said she's a champion for the ADOS movement. Ooh. And she's gonna state what ADOS mean, but I'm gonna state it beforehand, and it means the American descendants of slavery.
is for American descendants of slavery and fighting for reparations. We can't even get House Bill 40 passed, as everyone knows. I'm sure you all are aware of that. I am wanting a study of reparations, meaning we can repair the financial deprivation that has taken place in our nation at the hands of the lawmakers in our country. So, in my opinion, no, we have not leveled the playing field. We have not equaled the positions on the court, so to speak. We have a long way to go. And banning no-knock warrants and ending drug raids in America, that's simply designed to lock up the black man and the black woman. Mass incarceration. We have to stop these one step at a time.
And that's true, that we do have to stop these instances from happening, but that starts with us, the so-called black community, but the so-called black man becoming a leader in his household and showing the next generation, whether it be his son or his daughter, that you don't have to do the wrong things to make ends meet. That's something that we have to fix within ourselves. Even the issue of mass incarceration, that's something that we have to correct within ourselves. You can pass laws, but laws are meant to be broken. Let's just be real. And the whole idea that reparations could just repair the so-called black community, you know, that is a slap in the face of your ancestors to accept reparations, because basically that's you accepting the narrative that you came from slaves and that all of your previous descendants were slaves, when you could have came from wealthy, free so-called blacks in the Americas. You could come from so-called blacks that were living in Europe, because we were in rulership in Europe. So to accept reparations is you accepting the narrative that, okay, I came from slaves, and basically the powers that be paying you off, saying that, yeah, you been through slavery and this is how much money I feel like you deserve for what you went through. And that's bullshit. And I know individuals are not going to like what I said about the whole idea of reparations, but it's the truth.
How are you? This is Kenny Smith, and appreciate you coming on. And I think what you've said has been very, insightful. I have a two-part question of it. One would be the clarity on what you need from the NBA and their players in their 30 cities. So like a direct derivative of like, what do you do by joining? That would be the first part. And then the second part is, a lot of the even with Breonna's law that will be coming out. My thing about it is it feels like a reaction also to a negative thought. I know Gil Scott-Heron said the revolution won't be televised. But what he meant by that was there's a consciousness of thought that needs to change, because then it becomes a moving pendulum. Okay, well, no knock warrant. Oh, well, we're going to go through the back door, and we're going to do it this way. So it is a continually moving pendulum. So how do we get the consciousness of people to change? Then they will realize that they're on the wrong track and not on the right song, so to speak. So now, to me, it's also a derivative of that Breonna's law. How do we also add a change of consciousness in part of that law?
And also what Kenny Smith stated in reference to, yeah, they could do something about the no-knock warrants and then come around back. That's just how the so-called black man has been conditioned to think that, well, even if they do this, something bad is still going to happen. when, if you got a connection to God and the Most High, you already know that you're protected. We go through what we go through as a so-called black community also, not only because we are in our captivity and we're not in any form of power, but also because we've gotten away from the Most High. We will rather take information in or use science to explain the miracles of God, when this is American thinking. This is what the so-called white feels, that they can explain everything with science. But that idea of, oh, well, what if they go around back? We cannot think like that. We need to focus on us, ourselves, the so-called black community, fixing things ourselves, building things for ourselves, and things will begin to become more in our favor, and we can dictate the circumstances of how things should be handled if we have our own. Instead of, as Kenny Smith wanted to say, how can we change the consciousness of these other individuals? Some people are not meant to be changed. And God tells you in the Bible, He created good and evil. We need evil on this planet to help bring out other evil individuals. So, trying to change someone's consciousness, and also what Kenny Smith is subtly trying to say on a subtle note is that, can we change the consciousness of the so-called white races, when that shit is not going to happen? Some individuals are who they are. And my father always told me, someone has to be somebody. That may not be correctly how he said it. I'm sorry. Everyone has to be somebody. And what I mean by that is that person that molests kids, or that person that goes out here and kills someone, that's someone's son, nephew, uncle, father, grandfather, grandson, great-grandson. It continues. But we have to change our own consciousness and build up our own esteem before we can, let's go out here and change other people. When, like, for better choice of words, fuck that. I want to better things on my own. I'm not trying to be including other individuals in my plans. And then you wonder why shit gets railroaded, because I'm speaking to the so-called black community, because we have too many individuals trying to work their way through the pipeline and give their input and their opinions on things that don't concern them, as far as individuals outside of the so-called black community.
Okay, well, thank you. Those are two very good questions. So, answer to the first question, how can NBA players and owners and folks involved with the NBA help on a city-by-city basis? It's very simple direction. You must start with your local government, your local city council members. They may be called aldermen and alderwomen. Ours are called city council members here in Louisville. And each person in a city has a representative that represents them. Call that person, write that person, go see that person, and send other hundreds and thousands of people. Get all of your fans contacting your council members and just say the simple thing: pass Breonna's law, as they did in Louisville, Kentucky. That's a matter of record, and it's a very simple document. It's very easy to understand. And then ban no-knock warrants. Total ban on no-knock warrants, and require body cameras to be worn and footage stored for all search warrants. Keep it simple, because what I'm seeing across the country, I'm getting calls from city council members around the country asking for advice and guidance on how to do this. And the common mistake being made is they want to add one more thing to the law. They want to complicate the law. And if you put too many things in a piece of legislation, you give all of the elected officials who are going to vote on it, you start giving them things to be against.
And I will have to say that I agree with that to some extent. But let's stop acting like the opinion of the so-called commoner really matters to the individuals that are in the higher positions. And as she stated earlier in the video, we need you to tell your fans, hundreds of thousands, to go to their Senate or their politician, so to speak, and request the Breonna law be passed, which is just another fucking form of begging. Begging. If the individuals that were really in power truly cared about you, you shouldn't have to beg for better treatment. And if also you didn't put the so-called black community didn't put so much thought and power into the so-called powers that be, that, oh, well, we need to do this if we want things to get better. When if we put all of our power in the Most High, you wouldn't even be worrying about what the next race thinks about you or what's going on with them. Amazing.
Everyone, you call and ask for the total ban on no-knock warrants. That's the first step. It's a small step. But we are already starting to write other pieces of legislation here in Louisville. There are 8 more things that we are going to put in place. One is we are going to write a law that requires we have a civilian review board in place with subpoena power, with an inspector.
Oh, and also, I wanted to piggyback more on the aspect of just the idea of begging. And I just, history teaches a lot. And individuals should really read up on the past. Think about all the past protests that have happened and the past things that have happened. Has it really caused any big significant change? Like, really? Time to start thinking different and act and doing things differently.
Inspector General office. That is getting ready to take place in our city. Now, we can talk about that on another day because I don't want to start complicating the conversation. But to answer the second question, how do you change the consciousness of the folks that are working on this? When we figure that one out, we will have created a miracle. And there's one thing I know about consciousness. As you can see, I am a white woman. And I am the first white person and the first woman to serve the district I serve in the history of the city of Louisville. I do not know a lot about blackness, but I know 3 things for sure.
There's no such thing as blackness. And for you to say that you don't know a whole lot about blackness and you're gonna follow up with culture, I'm sure of it. For you to say that you don't know these things, why are you speaking on them? But this is just your way of you throwing, hitching your star to the wagon of the so-called black community that, look, I care about you. I really love the so-called black community. And I really don't know shit about the so-called black community. That's why I'm calling you guys by a color. But I'm gonna, give this idea for a Breonna law to the rest of the world, and I can gain some publicity and fame from that. Let's just be real. And I know people are not gonna like me saying that. I don't give a shit.
Sure. I know blackness is black in color, black in culture, and black in consciousness.
Yeah, definitely that there's black in color, but there's no such thing as a black consciousness. Because to have conscience means to be aware. Correct? So, as I stated earlier in the video, there's no such race as a color, so there's no such thing as blackness, consciousness. It's not. Man, it is a damn shame that We've gotten to the point where we've letting other races tell us what our race is. That is a fucking shame. And I'm not going to say we, because you can't tell me that I'm an African American. I'm a so-called black, but I said so-called. But I don't subscribe to that. I know that I'm more than that. The Most High gave me more than that.
I cannot be black in color or black in culture because I was raised the way I was raised. But it is my responsibility and obligation to be black in consciousness. And that means I must know my numbers. I must know the history that was being talked about a little while ago. I must completely understand the 401 years of institutional racism and oppression.
And, you know, I don't know why individuals constantly say that, oh, 400 years of slavery. Slavery did not last no fucking 400 years. You can Google it. It did not last 400 years. And that should show you just how misinformed she is for her to state that. But they'll put these individuals on television and give you the idea that they really care about the issues and topics going on with the so-called black community, so you can let your guard down and, hey, we're working on it. We're going to try to make sure it doesn't happen again. But it's going to happen again. And I'm sorry to say it like that. And I know individuals are not going to like me saying that. I don't give a shit.
In this country, I understand police were created to control the slaves and to capture runaway slaves. Brothers and sisters, we got a long way to go, and I'm in the fight. I'm aged. I'm going to be 64 on my next birthday, but I got a lot in me. So I'm in this fight with you if we can do this together. And justice is a broad subject. It means a lot of different things for a lot of people. But I think together we need to bring justice for black people in America.
Well, we are with you, my light-skinned sister.
Hey, wait a minute. Can you see a little bit of my principal people, the Cherokee Nation?
Absolutely.
Because right over my shoulder here.
And also, don't also get it confused, my so-called blacks, that the so-called Native American, or you see the Cherokee and all of the other stuff, those were so-called blacks.
Is what you cannot see is the internationally renowned Muhammad Ali Center, and he and his wife Lonnie Ali named me a daughter of greatness a number of years ago. So I was on the board of directors there, and I worked alongside Muhammad Ali, the greatest of all time, trying to do the very thing that he was put on earth to do. Y'all know it's bigger than basketball.
That's right.
It's bigger than basketball, and it was more than boxing. Boxing was his platform to do the thing God put him on earth to do, and that was to focus on humanity, all of humanity. So we're going to do this. We're going to win this game one basket at a time, and I'm going to win the game I'm in one law at a time, Amen. One city at a time, past Breonna's law. We got lots of NBA players living in Louisville now. Y'all need to come here and visit us.
One city at a time. We're going to make sure we pass that Breonna law one city at a time. And we got plenty of NBA players that come here. Mm-hmm.
How about Junior Bridgman, Milwaukee Bucks? We got Daryl Griffin from the Jazz. Daryl Griffin, oh my God, Daryl's on speed dial. You need to call him up and say, "Who's that crazy Barbara Sexton Smith woman?" And he'll laugh. He'll tell you. We graduated from the fine University of Louisville in different years together.
Yeah. Well, Councilwoman, we know you mentioned a few great Americans, and certainly you're doing some great work yourself, so we applaud you for that. You know, I'm just curious. Obviously, yesterday's news was a punch in the gut for everyone. And for those of us here on this panel, those listening.
I'm sorry, but and there's no disrespect, it wasn't really a punch in my gut, Grant Hill. But when you're a three-dimensional thinker, you look at things from different perspective. You just don't look at it from, oh, the system just hates so-called black people. You look at it from the aspect of a king. And I look at things from a king aspect, that these individuals are in power. When we are put in deleterious situations, it may not always go in our favor because we're not in rulership. But, you know,
at home, some who can maybe be cynical about our country, our society's relationship with race. What can you share with us? What can you give us that will make us be hopeful that change will happen? What can you share?
And it's sad also that for him as a so-called black man to ask not only a woman, and no disrespect, my beautiful women, but for him as a so-called black man to ask a woman from another race, what positive words can you give that positivity is in the future? When the change starts with you, Grant Hill, you're a so-called black man. It starts with you, me, and all other so-called black men, and being leaders for our community and giving more information to our so-called community. It starts with us. And then that can be translated to the newer generation.
Moving forward, projecting ahead, we talk about Dr. King and reaching the mountaintop. What can you give me that would make me feel that, in time, we're going to move the needle and make the change necessary to be really truly the United States of America?
Right, that's a wonderful question, and thank you for asking me that. They do call me the preaching politician here in Louisville. So what I say to you, my brother, if I could sing, I got a song about change on my heart. But I'm going to say to you what I tell folks, change is coming. And you know what? The sun goes up and the sun goes down and the water falls on the earth and into the rivers and the ocean and back up again. And tomorrow the sun's going to come up. That's what we know from Ecclesiastes. And then if you jump to Proverbs, you'll know that as a man or a woman thinketh in her heart, so is she. It is our job to instill as much hope as we can in each and every person that we meet or we see or interact with. Look at the platforms we have. Look at your platform, the arena and the NBA, my platform in elected office. And it is our responsibility to bring everyone along with us. We must not give up. We all have some responsibilities. Faith is the substance of things unseen, and my faith carries me through every day. I am absolutely fearless. I have been threats on my life so many times I quit counting. I've been left for dead as a result of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. God's going to take me home when he's ready to take me home. And in the meantime, wade in the water. Wade in the water, my brothers and sisters. That's right.
And that's going to be the end of that video, because now they're just not really talking about anything. But I just wanted to give my perspective from a different angle, and also just try to give some uplifting information to my so-called black people. I'm going to have some more videos in the way. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace.